The views expressed in the following podcast are not necessarily the views of the United States Air Force or the Air Force Reserve, but rather the perspectives of the individual speakers. No endorsement of any particular person, business, or interest is ever intended.
Welcome back to Ready, Set, Airlift, everyone. I'm your host, Julian Hernandez with the 433rd Airlift Wing Public Affairs Office. It's good to be back with you after something of a hiatus for the show. I was away from the office for training the past couple of months. We appreciate your patience and understanding during that pause, but now, just in time for the August UTA, we're here with a new episode. If you've ever noticed something around the wing that maybe is not as good as it could be, and then wondered who you could talk to about that, today we're going to learn more about the office tasked with fielding exactly those type of concerns. Major Yolanda Seals, Director of Complaints for the 433rd Airlift Wing. Ma'am, thank you so much for making some time to be with us today. I want to start off with, I think, the easiest question of the day. Why did you join the Air Force?
Oh, wow. Well, first, thank you for having me and allowing me to be a part of the trend of being on a podcast. This will be my first podcast, so
Welcome.
this is pretty cool.
First timer. All right. Always good.
So why did I join the Air Force? The honest answer is I grew up as a military kid. My mom was in the Army, and I had to figure it out after high school. I was kind of one of those kids where my parents made too much money for financial aid for college, but not enough to send me to college. So my motivation for joining the Air Force at 17 was to get the GI Bill. So someday I would be able to go to college and have that funded.
Outstanding. I feel like a lot of airmen probably resonate with that. So that's why I love to start with people's why. It's kind of like a great warm-up question, and it helps folks connect.
Yeah.
Now that we know a little bit about how you got here, tell us about what it means to be the Director of Complaints. I just have this vision of everyone just comes to bother you with complaints, right?
I will say it's never a bother. I am here for individuals to come and talk to me about what is going on that distracts them from the mission. Because ultimately, my goal is the same as a commander goal, is for mission-ready airmen. And part of what I do is to ensure that people have a good culture, that they feel valued, heard, seen whenever they come into their units, and be able to focus on the mission at hand. And if not, then, if there's some sort of issue, they can come and talk to me about it.
It's hard to do your job if you're working in an environment that's not conducive to it. And so this is why we have to have folks like you who sort things out and make things right when they're wrong. So let's talk a little bit about those who might not be familiar with exactly what IGQ means. What are your roles and responsibilities on any given day here at the wing?
My role and responsibilities is to be the eyes and ears for the commander. I tend to be in the space where I am listening. I will be walking around in the units. I will be engaging with the airmen as well as the leadership. I'm pretty much here for everyone, and hope that people want to engage with me on what is actually going on, or if I see a trend of behavior or hear things that could raise an eyebrow, I will just take note and help the commander with potential cultural issues and problems that can get in the way or grow or fester that deter mission readiness.
You talked about being out in the wing, interacting with the airmen. When folks see you out there, what's something that you want them to know or understand about your role beyond the fact that they can just bring concerns to you?
I'm here to listen. I want people to know that, again, that they are seen, that they are being heard. If they need anything. My job isn't always just to receive a complaint. I also can assist in a matter that they feel stuck in. I can reach out to a different group or reach out to a different agency for assistance as well.
In your work so far in the position, have you found that the term that comes to mind is maybe people have a hesitation to snitch, to use a term? Have you encountered that? And if so, what would you say to help counter that perception?
Luckily, I have not encountered someone being hesitant to come and talk to me. My office isn't necessarily solely for filing a complaint. You can come and discuss something with me just as a sounding board, or if you want to talk it out about a situation, but you don't necessarily want to file a formal complaint. You can come and we can discuss something. Like any other agency in the wing, I do have limitations, right? And that is harm to yourself, harm to someone else. I still have to report those things. But anytime you come to me and discuss something, you do have protected communication.
As airmen are thinking about bringing something to you in their day-to-day, what would be some of the criteria, as an example, that you would say, absolutely bring that to me?
So if you feel that or have seen that there is a violation of an AFI or a policy, a procedure, a law, regulation, you can file a formal type of IG complaint with supporting documentation, of course. Fraud, waste, and abuse reports, I handle those as well with supporting documentation, of course. And I think the most important thing is you have to provide me with supporting evidence and documentation of said violation that you may have seen or think has occurred. My job is to be neutral and an objective fact finder. That's huge in my role. I don't have an emotional investment either way. So part of what I will need when someone does want to file a formal IG complaint is you have to tell me what exactly was violated and provide supporting documentation to support the complaint itself. So it's a fine line sometimes where it's not necessarily my side of the house, but I may refer an individual to EO, and depending on what the complaint is.
You do want people to do some homework before they come to you, but you're generally open to, hey, if someone just has that sense of, I don't know what's wrong here, but I sense that something is, you're open to just having that conversation with them.
Absolutely. You can always come and talk to me and we can figure this out together. And I think that's important because sometimes we get in our own heads and we only see it from our perspective. And it's good to have someone who can be a trusted advisor that you can bounce off those thoughts or feelings to gain maybe a fresher outside perspective to see things in a different way. And it may not necessarily be what you thought it was.
Part of the idea behind this episode is to demystify a little bit that idea of filing a complaint. It sounds so strict, so formal, so perhaps unattainable for some airmen, right? Because they may not have the documentation or they may not even fully understand what the problem is. But it's good that we're breaking down that wall. People understand, hey, I'm not sure, but I think. And then you can help guide them. It's not just always straight to the hammer, right?
Exactly. And again, just because someone files a complaint, I still have to do, as part of my process, is a case analysis. And what essentially that means is that I take your complaint, what the violation was, all the supporting evidence, documents, whatever you provide, I will ask you questions for clarification. If there's any witnesses, I may reach out to them for better understanding. I could talk to SMEs, that have more fidelity over a particular AFI reference. I do talk with JA sometimes on cases to get a perspective, again, just depending on the case. And then from there, I will determine, after doing all of that review and analysis, as we call it, if this is something worth referring to the command to take care of, or transferring it to EO or to security forces or OSI, depending on what it is.
I want to draw you out a little bit more on that topic of support and documentation, because it can be difficult when you're going through a situation that you're not exactly sure, but that gut feeling is there that you're like, I'm not 100% sure that this is what it should be. What does that support and documentation look like? I mean, is that photos? Is it memorandums? A little bit of both?
Supporting documentation as it pertains to the IG realm isn't necessarily what you would have to give for an investigation, say like OSI, security forces. But it's not to say you can't provide those things like screenshots of text messages or MFRs, even those that maybe you wrote just to document a said conversation of some sort, a witness statement of someone who was also privy to that incident or whatever the situation you're coming to my office for. So it just varies. I don't turn away anything because, again, this is your complaint, and I will take whatever supporting documentation validates your complaint.
Major Seals, we talked about documentation. And so if you see something that particularly is wrong in your workplace, then maybe that is a situation to take photos or write things down or get witnesses, like you mentioned. But our Air Force right now is in a time of change, a time of transition, and there's policies that are coming from well above the wing that perhaps some airmen, it may not sit right with them, and they may feel like bringing that to you. Talk us through that process. If someone has an issue with a policy that's not necessarily local to the 433rd, how does that look like if they come to your office?
They definitely can come and discuss it with me, and then we can figure out how to proceed. Most, if not all, of our AFIs or DAFIs actually have OPRs that are attached to them. And some of them even have links that if you want to provide feedback or comments or anything of that nature, you can actually email that, or OPR, Office of Primary Responsibility is what it stands for, your questions or your concerns about said reference in their AFI that they oversee and write and revise. So that could be a way to be able to change policies. You're more than welcome to come and file a complaint with me about that, and I can take it up the IG channels as well, especially if it's a trend of something that you can prove is happening that is dangerous or unsafe, wrong. You can definitely bring that to me as well. And we can kind of go from there, and I can help you navigate that.
Another avenue for people to feel heard. What is something that you think is really misunderstood about your role as the IGQ?
That I can make a commander do what you want them to do.
I didn't get promoted, so I'm going to file a complaint type.
As an example, yeah.
From an educational perspective, what is something that you would teach? You know, this is an opportunity to reach a lot of our airmen. What's something you'd like to teach them about IGQ that might make their lives better?
One of the things is always make sure that you're bringing facts, not feelings. It's okay to feel upset about a situation, but I need proof of where to start to help you with that situation. I don't work off of feelings. I have to have something tangible, factual, that I can work off of, some sort of, like I said, a violation reference. And a great start for me is to fill out the IG complaints form, which is Air Force Form 102. That will tell you exactly what I'm going to need and fill it out in its entirety and hand that over with any supporting documentation. And I'll be able to look through that and do my case analysis and figure out if this is something that should move forward that command can help you with. Because my goal will always be to allow your leadership chain to help. Because oftentimes leaders don't necessarily know what is going on. And it's okay if people come directly to me, but I will always try to encourage someone to try to use their chain of command to try to resolve things at the lowest level. And now if they feel as though they can't or don't want to, I'm here to help. And I can help you through the complaints resolution process.
Is there any part of your role that perhaps like leaders or commanders take advantage of? They can come and bring something to you that you might be able to help them with from a command perspective, or is that a different side of the house?
My role for a commander is advisory. I will never, ever tell a commander how to command. I will never question a decision unless it is such a grave impact that I have people coming in to my office. And even then, I'm not going to tell you that you're necessarily wrong. I'm just going to tell you I'm getting a trend based off of maybe said policy or some MFR that you put out there of how you want to run your unit. My job is not to tell you how to command. That is not my function. My function is advisory only to a commander and to give trend and analysis of individuals out of a particular unit of what I'm getting in terms of complaints about whatever X, Y, and Z.
I'm glad you talked about command there because that's a great segue. Before you stepped into this role as director of complaints, you were the commander of the 433rd Maintenance Squadron. I was very curious to know how your experiences there are translating to your role now, right? I would think they're two very different things.
They're very different, but they actually help. I'm able to have, I feel, a well-roundedness of both being a unit commander as well as a follower of a unit commander, right? As we all are. I can bring possibly a command perspective when someone may come into my office and may not understand why a commander made a decision like this. Or at the very least, not necessarily explain the decision, but give them a fresher perspective of what a commander could be thinking, like the thought process, possibly, of what a commander could be thinking. And it's not to say I'm speaking on behalf of commanders, but my goal is for them to see it outside of their perspective, maybe from a holistic leadership perspective of why this policy came out. And again, I don't say whether it's right or wrong because I don't determine innocence or guilt. That is not my role. My role is to always try and be objective and neutral in the situation. So I see it from all sides.
Almost like a referee or an arbiter type role where we use the guidance that's available for all of us to look at, and you lead people to the specific guidance that applies to what their situation is.
Absolutely. Or help clarify. Because sometimes we can see things one way, but that's not necessarily what that means. And again, if it's something that is above my head, I will always reach out to a subject matter expert just to gain more clarity as I do my fact-finding and objective, neutral view of things. So you have to be honest about your limitations. I don't know everything, but I at least am resourceful enough to find someone who I believe knows.
Information seeking, right? It's like one of the fundamental attributes of being an Air Force officer.
Yep.
Do you have any experiences so far that you would count as, maybe like your favorite or most interesting situation you've dealt with so far? Maybe an opportunity you had to give that fresh perspective to someone?
I would say I had someone come into my office and they just wanted to talk. They wanted to figure out, not necessarily a complaint, but try to figure out if they were able to speak with their leadership. And absolutely, you are allowed to speak to your leadership. In fact, I encourage you to speak to your leadership. More so, if someone is getting in the way of you speaking to your leadership, then you definitely should come and see me. You are able to bring up issues to your leadership. They should create an avenue for feedback. And if you feel as though that's not happening, then come, let's talk about it, and let's try to get to a resolution to where you can be heard.
Great resource for people out in the wing to know that you're one of the many supporters that they can come to and get direction, get a little bit of relief, or just be heard from a different perspective. I want to take the last part of this episode to pivot to something a little different. We've had some discussions off the episode that you're a big advocate of mentoring, right? And so I want to open up some space here on this episode for you to talk about why you feel mentorship is important and get some messages out to our airmen who might not have a great mentor in their workspace.
I think mentoring is super important because I live it, right? There is no walking this journey, whatever your path is, whether you're an airman or a young officer, alone. You're always going to need someone that you can trust and speak to, that you connect with, most importantly, to help you through the challenging, hard times that come around every now and again. I think that that's so important to have an arsenal of people. So it's not just one person, but have multiple people at different ranks, different career fields, different genders, different ethnic backgrounds. A lot of my mentors are very different in a lot of ways, whether they're different in gender, whether they're different in ethnicity, whether they're different in their own military journey, meaning I have some that are prior enlisted officers like myself that I reach out to. I also have some officers that are straight out of the academy or out of ROTC and never been enlisted. I also have some enlisted that I call if I need some mentoring or advice. Because again, as I said earlier, we get in our own head sometimes and we only see our own perspective. And I think it's important that you have to be open to seeing beyond what you're seeing because we have blind spots. And blind spots can get in the way of mission readiness. It can get in the way of leading airmen. And I think that that's important to phone a friend whenever you're reaching a challenge. I know I did that when I hit some very tough decisions when I was in command because I knew the decisions that I made had impact to airmen's lives, their livelihoods, their families. And I never took a hard decision lightly. It was always well thought out. I took my time. I ensured that I talked to my resources like JA, EO, or Miss Lewis, DPH as well, before I made a decision. And of course, we have mentors that work with us day to day that are your peers. I think peer mentorship is important as well. When I was a young officer, I was a part of CGOC. I was on active duty or RegAF, and I was a part of CGOC. I thought that lieutenant network is strong. I could call any LT across that wing that I was stationed at and get things done for my airmen, get things done for my mission. That's so important to have those kinds of connections. And that carried me through not only learning from my peers, but also when I became a commander, I had peer commanders that I would phone a friend and say, what do you think about this? Or have you gone through that? And I think mentorship is 360 degrees. John Maxwell has a book called 360 Degree Leadership. And I think it's such a great starter book. And it does talk about, leading above you, leading lateral, and leading those who are below you. And I think that that's so important that as you are walking that journey of leadership, that you are getting poured into as well. So you can develop your philosophies, your leadership toolkits, and your phone a friend lists of folks. So my journey has never been solo. I've always had people from different transitions of my life, from being a young airman to being a young lieutenant to being a commander to now even this role, that I reach out and phone a friend and get some mentorship, whether it's about professional things, some personal. You have different mentors on different levels. Spiritual mentorship, if you're a spiritual person, I am. I think that it just continues not only to develop you while you wear the uniform, but it actually develops you as your core self, your character, your morality. And also it can humble you and, give you a good, chin check.
Sometimes we need that wake-up call, right?
We do.
To smell the coffee and see what's really going on.
Exactly. And told the truth that, you're not hitting the mark like you should be hitting the mark. And we have to be open to that. And sometimes that pill is easier to swallow, per se. That truth is easier to take when it's from someone that you value their perspective and opinion and you trust what they're telling you is honest and true.
I think of it sometimes too as you may have an idea bouncing in your head, but it's that interaction with someone else, that trusted counsel, that helps shape it into an actionable way forward, a COA, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than just amusing. So it's interesting too, you talked about the diversity of mentors. I always like to think of my group of mentors as the council. Not that I ever convene them for meetings, right? But I go around and when I have a question, I sort of get different people's perspective that I trust, and that helps me polish it down to, okay, it's not just me thinking this, or there's trusted people who are seconding this idea. It's probably worthwhile. What would you boil down to the most important piece of mentorship you've received in your career so far, if you can think of one?
Just as people are willing to pour into you, make sure you pay it forward to someone else. I think it's important to mentor those around you and those that you lead, but also be mindful of your time and who you mentor. You can't mentor everybody. I found that as I became more mature in my leadership and more mature as an officer, that I am selective in who I give my time and energy to, just as much as I'm selective of who I let pour into me as well, right? So it kind of goes both ways. I will never force. I think it's important for mentors or those who want to mentor to never force your mentorship on someone who's not willing to receive it. I think you just need to move forward. Mentorship is also some sort of kinship in a lot of ways. You have to have that mutual respect. And also mentorship is not necessarily someone telling you what to do, but helping you figure out what is best for you to do. Being selective of who can help you achieve your personal goals, even though they may be rooting for you or think that, you can go the distance or accomplish X goal. They have to be okay with you not maybe necessarily wanting that for yourself or taking other factors into account of why you can't. So it goes both ways. It's not just, pouring into someone, but also being okay with an individual not being ready or wanting to be poured into. So I think I probably had about 2 things there, maybe.
I love that you made that distinction between someone telling you what to do and then someone helping you find for yourself what it is that you should do.
Right.
I think an often misunderstood aspect of mentorship, and in our office, I see it in public affairs, right? One of our functions is to advise and counsel. And sometimes folks are like, well, just tell me what it is that I should do. And I'm like, well, that's not the point of this. We're here to provide a perspective, to provide an input, and then you're going to consider it, and you're going to need to make the decision that's right for you in your situation.
Yep. Same as my office.
A little bit of overlap.
Yep.
You talked earlier about that transition from being enlisted to on the officer side of the house. And I feel like in my travels around the wing, I'm hearing more often of enlisted members, which is great, that are looking forward to commissioning. I kind of long about did that recently. I was enlisted.
Congratulations, LT.
Thank you. The big reveal. Yeah, was enlisted in the Army, learned my lesson, came over here to the Department of the Air Force as a civilian, and then enjoyed things here at the 433rd so much that I was ready, willing, and able when the opportunity came up for this commissioning slot. So in that pay it forward mindset, I had a lot of great people who offered me invaluable advice on this process of coming over to the officer side. I would love to hear your perspective of what are some things you wish you knew up front? What were the considerations switching from enlisted to officer? And then maybe what was a hard lesson that you learned in that path?
Oh, wow. So many loaded questions.
I will be happy to repeat the questions. We can take it one by one.
Okay. So what made me want to be an officer? I think it was a very well thought out and conscious decision. My story is a little bit different because I wasn't OTS. I was actually ROTC. So I had completed my enlistment when I was on active duty, when I was in Reg F. And I was done. At first, I was like, I'm never coming back in the military. I got my credentials to go into the FAA as an air traffic controller. I'm set. This is what I want to do. And then part of me was like, if I ever come back in the military, if I ever find myself wanting to serve again, I'm going to be an officer doing it. I kind of knew right then and there that I had that drive and want to serve at this level. And it's not to say that serving in an enlisted capacity is bad. I mean, I have friends that have retired as chiefs and seniors and master sergeants that had phenomenal careers. And I am just as proud as them, for doing the choice and not crossing over to the dark side, as they say, like myself, right? Because it is a different ball game than being enlisted, and we need sharp enlisted folks too. And I think that you have to really want to do this because being in leadership is never an easy journey, whether you're enlisted leadership or whether you're in officer leadership. I think it's important that not only do you have to have the true desire to want to do it, but you got to educate yourself on it as well. And I think that's important, as you said, to speak with some officers that were prior enlisted that kind of see where their motivation is at and some of the challenges that they faced. What I wish I knew then that I know now, well, I don't necessarily think that I have something necessarily that I've ever regretted or say, man, I wish I knew this key piece of information. I would say what I learned early on when I became an officer, having been already someone who has served, that there is no prior E officer rank. A second lieutenant is a second lieutenant. So there is a sense of humility that you have to bring when someone looks at your rank and say, you're a second lieutenant, you don't know anything, don't touch that kind of deal, right? I think where a prior enlisted officer can make their way and navigate those waters, because again, you're at the bottom of the totem pole just as an officer. is through their maturity and being able to grow and have that humility. I think that that's so important. I know for my journey, I already had air traffic control credentials. I had worked in several control tower facilities. So when I came back in as a second lieutenant as a 13 mic airfield operations, I'm in charge of air traffic and airfield management and ATCALs and radar. So all those things that are dedicated to the flying mission. I had to get my upgrade training. And part of that was to get air traffic control credentials. Right.
Should be easy, right?
Definitely easy, but I had to be humble enough and show humility in my training when a young senior airman or A1C who's rated is my trainer. Now, again, resume to resume, this is probably like their first facility that they have worked in. I've worked in several, both in military and in civilian. So I still had to remember that I'm a student, I'm a trainee, even though I have more skill set than them. But they do get rusty over time. I hadn't talked to an aircraft in years, probably about a good 5-6 years prior to that, right? While I was in school doing everything. So again, I think that humility is such a key factor when you are starting at the bottom, even though you're an officer. But I will tell you what it is not, is a means to dictate and to be aggressive as a second lieutenant. I've seen some prior enlisted officers fail horribly in leadership when they use that as a, oh, well, I'm an officer now kind of deal. That's not what that's about. It really should be about allowing your rank to be used to help your airmen. Really having the right motivation, I think, is key for someone who wants to go from E to O. Because as Kermit the Frog says, it's not easy being green.
Yeah, that advocacy piece is, I think, really important. Something I've thought a lot about, like, why would I was doing quite well on my civilian side, still am, thankfully, all continues well. But like, why would I want to do this? Why wouldn't I take on additional responsibility, go to more training, have to be back at the bottom of the totem pole? And for me, that advocacy piece rang really true. I could bring things to my team and to our mission as an officer that I couldn't as a civilian, or if I came back in as enlisted. And I look forward to, even still in that LT phase, learning and figuring out what it all means. But when I get to that point of development, I look forward to advocating for my people and looking for every opportunity to do so, even now as a brand new officer.
And you'll always continue to learn. I mean, even as a major, I'm still learning. I'm still open to learning from others. You have to be a lifelong learner. Nobody has arrived fully in leadership. I think that's why it's so important that you do have mentors and you do have a good leadership team that can help you make those tough command decisions or make those tough leadership calls. That's why we talk about the triad, the commander, the SCL, and the first sergeant, and how that trifecta is so important to leading a unit, and having that synergy amongst those three pays dividends for the culture of a unit.
Couldn't agree more. And leadership is that constant lifelong learnings. I would say for those not yet in leadership, or who perhaps that's not their goal in their career, just always be mindful of those who have chosen to lead. They're learning too, help them out.
Absolutely. We're never perfect. The toughest lessons and most valuable things that I've learned are some of my leadership fails.
We've covered so much already, but is there any parting words you'd like to leave our airmen with, whether it's about your role as the director of complaints or whether it's about developing as a leader
When it comes to being the director of complaints, definitely come see me. Let's talk it out. Let's talk it through. I think it's important that you know that there's a place where you will be seen, you will be heard out. It's protected communication. I think that that's important for people to know and be reminded that what we talk about is what we talk about. And again, unless it's a crime or self-harm, then that's a different, I must report that. But outside of those things, I want people to know that it's about me being here for you all, airmen, leaders, civilians, anybody who's DOD employee can come and talk to me. And then I can assist you. We can file if you want to, or we could just talk it out. So I'm here for that. So as far as leadership and mentorship, find a leader that you admire and inspires you and ask them the things that you are trying to learn and grow. Because we all have areas that we could be better in, we can know more about, and talk with them. This journey, no matter what side you're on, if you're an enlisted member or an officer, we all can learn from each other. As I said, my mentors are E's, my mentors are O's, various backgrounds, genders, career fields. I think it's so important to have good perspective and varying perspectives as well, to give you something to think about as you embark on your own journey.
Outstanding. Major Seals, what's your preferred way for people to come visit you down here in the headquarters building? Is that the best option, your office down here, first floor of the wing headquarters?
Yes, I'm located on the first floor in the back hallway, room 119. So I kind of sit in the middle of that hallway, if you know where JAG is at, or Miss Dina Lewis's office, our wonderful DPH. You pass right by me to go to her office, so that's where I'm located. I should be on your information boards as well, and if not, make sure that I am. You can always contact me on the cell phone that's on the poster. I am a TR, so keep that in mind. I'm not a full-time employee on this side of the complaints side, but I do return your call in a timely manner, and I am local to San Antonio. I'm just right up the road.
Major Seals, thank you so much for making some time to talk about complaints and leadership. Sometimes they're related on this episode of Ready, Set, Airlift.
Thank you for having me.
Major Seals also asked that we let leaders across the wing know she is available to brief airmen during the UTA about the details of the complaint process. A quick reminder to look out for our monthly Alamo flyer, which is released before each UTA, outlining key information and events happening during the drill weekend. Look out for the Alamo flyer in your military email inboxes, on the Wing Teams page, or posted in various places around the wing. On that note, we'll wrap up this episode of Ready, Set, Airlift. Don't forget to like or subscribe on whichever platform you like to listen on, and don't hesitate to send us feedback at our email, alamowingpa@gmail.com. I've been your host, Julian Hernandez. Until next time, stay safe and have a great UTA.